King Vortigern!
Why is the water dropped?
There are rumors. The legend of the sword. Of a king other than yourself.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan Silver here with LazyDog Films, and today we're going to be talking about King Arthur, Legend of the Sword.
There's the king.
Now, what exactly is King Arthur, Legend of the Sword? It didn't do so well at the box office, and it got critically panned by critics, and I wanted to know why. The trailers made it seem like it is going to be a fun film in the same vein as Sherlock Holmes, which was also directed and written by Guy Ritchie. And in the first 5 minutes, I can understand why it didn't do so well. It is boring. Completely boring. Now, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword does try to follow one or many, or basically it joins most of the theories and stories of King Arthur into one film. And I know nothing about King Arthur, it turns out, except for the fact that he pulls Excalibur from a stone block, and that's about it. And it seems like the filmmakers are just wanting to hit you with every little bit of Easter egg. Oh look, here's his round table. Here are his knights. Here's Merlin the wizard. And I was kind of like in the theater going, yeah, I've heard of one of those things. Now, let's be fair. I really wanted to like this film because based on the trailers, it made it seem like a fun action film with some magic, not a lot of it, just some magic to, give it that sense of like a lore reminiscent of Lord of the Rings, or sadly, it came out mostly like Snow White and the Huntsman, which is terrible. And not only because the story sucks, which it does, also because the film is very bland. Very bland. In terms of its color palette, it is boring to look at. I think you would have much more fun watching white paint dry than watching King Arthur, mainly because the film's color palette goes from gray to black to gray to black, back to gray, back to black, back to gray, ending in like a light orange. Aside from it being bland in the story and bland with its color palette, the CG isn't that great either. And it relies heavily on CG, especially towards the end of the film. You know what? Let me stop. Let me be fair. Let me talk about the things that I do like. Charlie Hunnam proves that he could actually lead a summer Hollywood blockbuster film. He's very charming, and his acting, though not top-notch, is somewhat passable. And even the supporting cast, which is also led by Djimon and Hounsou, is also not terrible either. It feels like everybody has a great chemistry with one another that really oozes off screen, and that's about it. I mean, we have Jude Law as a maniacal king who is willing to kill his nephew and his wife and his daughter just to get power, and that is kind of cool because Jude Law really hams up every scene he's in. It's like Jude Law plays being a king like Al Pacino played playing a blind man in Scent of a Woman. He's just so over the top, it's ridiculous. That's where the happy stuff and fun stuff end for King Arthur. It's very forgettable. And it's not only forgettable, but the plot is bad. Like, the story's not that well written. While the characters do have that same sort of Guy Ritchie flair that we've seen on Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and even in the Sherlock Holmes films, the plot here feels, or could have been the editing, but mostly it's in the story. It takes a long time for the actual plot to begin. It really does. There's a sequence in the film where he has to, where Arthur has to be humbled by going into this forest of gigantic rats and snakes and things of that sort of stuff. And it's like, how long is this? Like maybe 15, 20 minutes? Or at least it felt that way, because this film at 2 hours and 6 minutes feels like it was a 3.5 hour long epic. And so it takes a long time to have King Arthur, or Arthur, humble himself. It takes an even longer time to him to realize that the sword has powers and it's trying to bond with him. And it feels like it takes an eternity to get to the fact that he has to take down this king before the king kills him. There are some scenes that are funny because these characters or these actors get along so well, but that's about it. And frankly, to be honest, it was one of those films where you can begin watching it, doze off, think about anything other than the film you're watching in front of you, come back and miss maybe a minor detail or two, but ultimately that story that you're watching is, pretty straightforward. And ultimately, you're going to know exactly what's going to happen, what happened before, and what's going to happen next. There was even a guy behind me who was actually sleeping in the first half hour of the film. Like open mouth snoring in the film. The theater was small, so you can actually hear him breathing kind of heavily. And that doesn't bode well for a film that's supposed to be this medieval mage and magic and wizard story. This review is not going to be good, mainly because this film wasn't even worthy enough to be seen. I'm sorry. I mean, it does carry over that Guy Ritchie sense of style, with sweeping camera movements, but you mix it in with too much CG, and everything really starts to break down. It all starts to look artificial. There's even a scene towards the end of the film where it's one of the two final battles, where it's Arthur and he's finally learning to use Excalibur the way it's meant to be used. And he's fighting a series of grunts of the king, and he's fighting. All of a sudden, the camera switches and it turns into a CG fight scene that reminded me exactly of the fight sequence from The Matrix Reloaded, that Agent Smith scene, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. Mainly because we are still unfocused. We're still focused on King Arthur at this point. And so, being so close to a CG character, you can really see the rubberized skin of that character model, and it doesn't look good whatsoever. I think maybe they ran out of budget. It was almost $200 million budget for this film, and it tanked terribly. So we will not be able to get to see the final 6 or 7 films in the series that this was originally planned to be. But it seems like they ran out of budget shooting this scene and the scene after this one, where he takes down the king, where it's almost like they could have spent 6 or 7 weeks planning and filming this sequence and adding minimal CGI to the sword, and maybe some like pixie dust coming off of people as he pushes them away. But it was like, no, we need to get this done in 6 weeks to completion. Not 6 weeks to film and then another 4 or 5 weeks to edit that sequence. No. We need to film this sequence and have it done in 6 weeks. What's the quickest way to do that? And Guy Ritchie's like, oh, I don't know. How about we just use the CGI sequence of events to make it look like that Agent Smith scene in The Matrix Reloaded. You know, that the good one where rubber Keanu Reeves fights 100 or 1,000 rubber Hugo Weavings. You know that one? Yeah, I know that one. That one terrible scene in that. It's not a great movie. Ultimately, I'm saddened at the fact that this movie turned out terrible, because I really wanted to like it. I'm sorry. If you want to read the full review, you can go ahead and click on the card in the top right corner, or click in the description, or visit LazyDogFilms.net. Don't forget to hit that like button if you liked the video, or hit that dislike button if you disliked it. Share it, comment it, tell me what you think about King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Follow me on Twitter at LazyDogFilmBlog, or like on Facebook at LazyDogFilms, or or if you want to help support the channel by donating, go to patreon.com/LazyDogFilms. There's actually a button in the video that you can click, or you can visit the link in the description down below. If you want to check out some of my other reviews, you can click on the right hand side here and check out one of the reviews that pops up. Anyway, I've been Jonathan Silva, and this has been LazyDog Films.